Hello, everyone. Welcome to panel C of the annual forum. Today is our first day. I'm just going to give everyone a second to kind of come into the room, get settled in. We're so excited to have you all. I hope that you've been able to catch some of the earlier sessions today. This morning, we had some really interesting sessions that were all about open infrastructure, how that can support open science, and then also how community can also support or how we can frame open infrastructure from a community lens. So they were really interesting talks. I really hope you got to catch them. If not, then as you will know from previous years, if you've been with us for a while, we do always have recordings of our sessions a couple of weeks after the forum is over. So you can keep your eye on those. Just maybe a minute or two left while we just wait for everybody to make their way in. Oh, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Nahil. I am a community engagement manager for the forum, and I'm also one of the main organizers for the third annual forum, and I'm also going to be chairing today's session. So it's great to have you all with us. Please do, while we just wait for everybody to settle in, please feel free to introduce yourself on the chat. We love to read all about who's with us, where you're coming from, why you have decided to be a part of the forum today. Um, it's always an incredible opportunity for us to get to know our network a little better and, understand who our audience is so that we can better serve you. Yeah, all right, cool. So let's get started, I think, at this point. Lemise, I'm so happy that you were able to join us, and I think you can all see our speakers here. I'll give them all proper introductions as we go through. But we really have a great lineup of speakers today, and I'm very excited to hear all about their presentation. So just running through some housekeeping slides really quickly. I think in 2024, most of us know how to use Zoom, so I won't run into the details too much, but Zoom has a movable window feature. So in the event that you're currently listening in while you're at university or at work, and maybe want to put us to the side while you do some other tasks, you can minimize it. If you feel that any of us, myself included, or the speakers are speaking too quickly, you can also use the raise hand feature, and that will give us sort of a signal that we should slow down. This is a bilingual event, and we do cater to a multilingual audience. So if at any point you feel like it's hard to keep up, just let us know, and we'll do our best to accommodate and make sure that the language is as accessible as possible. Please use the chat, like I said, to introduce yourself, but also if you have any technical issues, please do send that over. We do have Alona, our wonderful tech support at the back, making sure that everybody, is good to go and that there are no issues. So if you have any issues, please do raise them there. If you have any questions that are content related, however, please do put those in the Q&A box. A lot can happen on the chat, and if you insist on putting your question in the chat box, there's a very good chance that we will miss it. I will try my best to catch them all, but there is a good chance we will. So please do use the Q&A box if you have any content related questions for the Q&A at the end. Excuse me, so that we can make sure that we can catch everybody's queries. So moving on, in case you would like to know a bit more about our speakers, or you would like to know more about our sessions for the rest of the day and also for the upcoming days, you can now access our English program and our Arabic program online. We have PDFs ready to go with lots of little details and information about the event as well as the forum initiative in general, and some lovely welcome notes from our co-organizers as well. Moving on, we want to also just take a second to thank our sponsors, of course, who do really support us in making all of this possible. We appreciate, all of the support that we do get from the wider community, whether it's industry or general community or grassroots community organizations. Every bit counts. So we're very grateful for that. Um, and now I think we will move on to the agenda. So this is panel C, in case anyone wasn't entirely sure where they are right now. And the title of the panel is Strategic Planning, National, Regional, and Global Strategic Case Studies. We have three wonderful speakers who are going to be tackling the conversation from multiple lenses and also looking at case studies from around the world. So a lot of it will be based, some of it's based, in North Africa, some of it will be based in Sub-Saharan Africa, and then also just a more global lens. So we have Dr. Monica Granados, Lamis Yahya, Dr. Lamis Yahya Mohammed Al Khair, and Irina Kuchma, who are all joining us from completely different parts of the world. Now I'm going to stop talking and hand over the floor to our speakers. So I'd love to introduce Dr. Monica, who has a PhD in ecology from McGill University. And while working on her PhD, she discovered incentives in academia promote practices that make knowledge less accessible, and has since devoted her career to working in the open science space in pursuit of making knowledge more equitable and accessible. She's worked on open knowledge initiatives with Mozilla, Pre-Review, and the Government of Canada, and she's now the Director of Open Science at Creative Commons, working on promoting open access of scientific research. The floor is yours, Monica.
Thank you so much, Nihil. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. It's such a pleasure and privilege to get to talk to this part of the world. I am based in Ottawa, and I don't often get a chance to have an audience with the other side of the world. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about presenting, the problem of open through the lens of two case studies of the Sustainable Development Goals and tools that we can use in open to help us achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm just going to set up my presentation. So I want to start with this principle that knowledge about our world is a public good. And if it is a public good, then it needs to be accessible to everyone. And I think this audience here is very much aware that this is not the status quo. Knowledge about our world is not accessible to everyone. So how does that affect our ability to solve world scale problems like the Sustainable Development Goals? I think we also believe that sharing knowledge is a social justice issue, that it's not just a technical concern, it's not just a barrier to doing research or to creating experiments, collecting data. It's really elevated into something greater than a logistical problem. It's a social justice issue, that if we do not have the knowledge about problems being accessible, then we cannot solve them. And today I want to go through two case studies using specific Sustainable Development Goals that were developed by the United Nations to show you how through openness, it can help us solve and achieve these two Sustainable Development Goals, and arguably the other 15 that are laid out before the UN. So the first case study is around the COVID-19 pandemic. And it really, I think, falls under Sustainable Development Goal number 3, good health and well-being. I think we're all really familiar with COVID-19. It started back in 2019, and of course, well before that, but it was officially sort of rose to the awareness of the World Health Organization at the end of 2019, when the World Health Organization was informed of, some cases of pneumonia of unknown origin. And I'm starting here because the point here is that this was a new problem. It was a sort of a case study within the Sustainable Development Goal 3 around good health and well-being. But, this was a new virus for the world. And that's important because it meant that there was not a lot of knowledge about it ahead of time. In 2020, it was officially named as a pandemic, and here that's important because now it's sort of no longer sort of a localized endemic problem. This was a world scale problem. It sort of, rose to the prominence and the importance of all of the national governments throughout the world and these international bodies. And so now these international bodies now have a problem, have a virus that is brand new to the world and is having economic, health, social consequences across the world, a world scale problem. But something happened that was pretty exceptional in knowledge production. Because it rose to the prominence of a pandemic, a world scale problem, the research community and those producing knowledge around this problem that previously did not have any knowledge about it recognize that as knowledge is produced about this problem, we need to share it openly, despite the fact that this runs counter to how knowledge is usually shared. Usually it's kept close. We all know this. But we knew that if we were going to solve a problem like a new virus that was affecting the entire world, knowledge needed to be shared about it. China publicly shared the genetic sequence of COVID-19. The national science and technology advisors from over a dozen countries signed a letter that said that as publishers, please make publications around COVID-19 open. Do not put barriers around the knowledge of COVID-19. There's also there was a really strong response to that call. As of 2021, so pretty close to the pandemic, 77% of COVID-19 related papers were open access, and preprints became really popular to use. So preprints, the version of the manuscript for going through formal peer review, was a method of science communication that was readily adopted by researchers, knowledge producers that were running experiments and wanted to communicate their results early and in a way that did not require any subscription to access. So all together, this really sort of shows how when we have a problem around health that was affecting the entire world, the research community, knowledge producers responded to the need to make this research and knowledge open and led to the quick development of treatments, allowed sort of for epidemiologists to sort of like understand the spread better, and potentially ultimately the development of the COVID-19 vaccine that was created in almost record time. So I think this is a really interesting case study for how openness can help us solve a pandemic and really fits under the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals by tackling SDG 3. Also been working on another case study at Creative Commons in collaboration with Eiffel and Spark. We've been working on another world scale problem, the climate crisis. So Sustainable Development Goal number 13 is tackling the climate change. It's calling for climate action. I think arguably climate change may be the greatest problem that our generation, humanity, has ever faced. And its appearance as a sustainable development goal then should be no surprise. And what I want to make the case here is that we also need access to knowledge about the climate crisis if we're going to solve it. So what is the current status quo in terms of how much information, how many research papers as a indicator are open? So what we did is some work with the Curtin Open Knowledge Initiative, and we took all the papers that are classified under climate change from 1979 to 2023. That gives us almost 500,000 papers, so 467,000 outputs. And of those, almost 50% are open and 50% are closed. So that means that almost effectively half the knowledge about climate change is still behind a paywall, that most of us, including myself, who does not have an academic subscription, cannot access knowledge about climate change. That means, theoretically, if I want to go and access a paper about climate change, it comes down to a coin flip if I'm going to have access to that paper or not. How are we going to solve a problem like climate change if the knowledge about it is not open? And so what we're undertaking through our partnership with Spark and Eiffel at Creative Commons is two initiatives to change these statistics, to work with community infrastructure, to work with knowledge producers, to work with publishers, to work with existing infrastructure, leverage the Creative Commons licenses, to change these statistics, to move us towards a world where climate change research is open, where it's not a coin flip, where if I go to read a paper about climate change, it's going to be open. The first initiative is our paper pledge for the planet. And what this does, it aims to drive climate action by encouraging authors to deposit their climate paper in a repository. So how does the pledge work? What does this pledge mean? Really, at a really high level, what we're looking to do is leverage existing repositories and Creative Commons licenses, as well as the right of researchers to deposit an author accepted manuscript to move us towards more access to climate change research. The way that it works is that we first are identifying climate change publications using OpenAlex. So, we have that big corpus of papers and almost 500,000 papers. And what we're going to do, what we are doing, is dividing that corpus into a smaller group of papers. We're going to separate a smaller portion, like have off a portion of those papers. And here we're looking at papers that have been published in the last 5 years. And the reason that we're doing that is because it's more likely that if we go and reach out to the author of the paper, we can still contact them via the email that's provided in the corresponding author metadata file or metadata entry. It's also more likely that they'll still have a copy of the author accepted manuscript. So the author accepted manuscript, if you're not familiar with that term, is the version of the manuscript that has gone through peer review. So it's further along than a preprint, but it hasn't been fully formatted to the journal formatting. So it's usually a Word file, a text file, or a PDF of that text file. Most journals, sometimes after an embargo period, others without one, will allow you to deposit that author accepted manuscript, the unformatted version, into an institutional repository, into a general repository with an open license, an open CC license. So what we're doing is, again, taking that sort of smaller group of papers that have been published in the last 5 years, and then we're going to go and find those authors and ask them to deposit that author accepted manuscript. And we're doing it in 2 ways. We're working with EIFL and CORE through institutions, and we're also directly appealing to researchers by emailing them. And then we work with OA Works to support the depositing of that author accepted manuscript, either get in an institutional repository, so the one that, from the institution they belong to, or a general Zenodo repository if they don't have access to an institutional repository, and try to make that as easy as possible for them, to show them that making your work open can be as easy as uploading a file. So when we work with institutions, as I mentioned, we're working with EIFL and CORE. And what's happening there is that, again, we're taking, the subset of papers that have been published in the last 5 years, and then we are dividing it by institution, and then working with the institutional and national and regional partners to have them email their researcher of the institution they belong to, and then the researcher deposits it into their institutional repository. So for example, working with the Toronto Metropolitan University, they've asked for their group of papers, sent them their group of papers, and then they directly appeal to their researcher, and the researcher is going to deposit into the Toronto Metropolitan University's institutional repository. And if they don't have a partner who's working with us, if they're not part of an institution that is partnering with us or part of the CORE network or EIFL network, they also have the option to directly use a widget that we have on our website, that OA Works has on their website as well, that really makes it very easy for you to upload your author accepted manuscript and find out what version of the author accepted manuscript the journal allows you to deposit. And this is what I think is really neat, is thinking about ways in which we can make it easier for researchers to practice openly. With this widget, you really just have to insert your digital object identifier from your version of record, so your publication, and then it gives you information about what version can be deposited, or what conditions and license, and you just upload it directly on the website. You just upload your Word document, your PDF, and it gets deposited into the Zenodo repository if you don't have an institutional repository. I really like that. I really like this initiative because I think it's a way to re-empower researchers, to make it easier for them to not only make their work open, but contribute to making climate change research open at the community level, at the researcher level. and mobilize the repository community, library communities to work to find that research that can be made open almost immediately. The other initiative that we're working on is our Unbinding Knowledge program. And this one works a little bit differently because we're directly appealing to publishers to provide open access to climate change research. This is based on a proposal from Peter Suber, who asked, can we accelerate research by making previously published articles on a subject of urgent need open? And really the concept here is, can we take a group of papers that are of the subject of urgent need and directly appeal to the publisher to make this work open? The publisher in return gets gets lauded for making this work open, and the public gets the work to be open. So we're taking this idea and applying it to climate change research. Our challenge is to make approximately 18,000 papers from about 200 publishers open access. This corpus of papers are the papers that are cited in the sixth assessment report from the IPCC. One could argue these are the most important papers that have been published on climate change. A panel of researchers have gone through all of the papers that have been written about climate change, approximately in the last 10 years, and have said, these are the most important papers. It's about, I think, something like 45,000 papers are cited in the sixth assessment report. About 60% of those are already open, leaving us only 18,000 papers to open. Some of these papers are going to be opened through the paper pledge, but a good majority of these can be very quickly opened by publishers, similar to what they did during COVID-19, again, when they recognized for a world scale problem, we need accessibility to or access to this information. So we're directly asking publishers, small and large, here are the papers that you have published that have been cited in the IPCC report. Can you open up these papers for us? And we've already have seen some successes with some small publishers and are in communication with some of the larger publishers. And we really hope that this is something that publishers will respond to and will recognize their role in making climate change research open and ultimately in helping us tackle Sustainable Development Goal 13. But I hope I've made a case here for how openness really is sort of fundamental condition to helping us solve and achieve Sustainable Development Goals. It's not just for good health, it's not just for climate change. All of the Sustainable Development Goals can be better achieved, can be achieved faster if we have access to the knowledge about them. And I think there are ways for us to take sort of these discipline-specific approaches to open access to help us mobilize and movement build across all of the Sustainable Development Goals. I'll leave you here with my contact information and the website to Creative Commons. Thank you for your time. And I think we're taking questions at the end.
We are. Thank you so much, Monica. I found your presentation so interesting, especially because I feel like oftentimes when we talk about things that are related to the SDGs, or we talk about sort of, making the world a better place, a lot of times it can feel really intangible. It can be feel really hard to quantify. So it was great to just listen and understand that there are are like numbers, and there are case studies of exactly how we can go about supporting the world through openness. I think that was really
Absolutely.
great to process. Moving on, we have Dr. Lamis El Khair, who is going to be giving us a presentation titled Harnessing Open Science for Transformative Impact, AREN's Multifaceted Approach to Advancing Research Across Africa. We're so happy to have Dr. Lamis with us, and AREN is actually one of Forum's members. So we're incredibly honored to have you with us. A little bit about Lamis. She's a lecturer at the University of Khartoum and co-director and training lead of the African Reproducibility Network, AREN. She's currently finalizing her PhD in medicinal chemistry, and holds a Master's of Science in Molecular Medicine and a Bachelor's of Pharmacy. She's a dedicated research assistant at the Mycetoma Research Center, and her academic and professional endeavors are driven by her profound commitment to advancing open science and enhancing science communication. The floor is yours, Lamis.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nahil, for this nice introduction. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. So as Nahil said, I'm Lamis El Khair, and co-director and the training lead of the African Reproducibility Network, AREN, and I'm really happy to share with all of you today, some of the activities that we're doing at AREN to enhance open science adoption within the African research ecosystem. So currently we are a very small team. It's just me and Emmanuel is the founder of AREN and also the co-director and the community engagement lead. And in this session, I'll just introduce AREN's agenda, I'll introduce our community and some of the engagement activities that we do and some of the challenges that we're facing and what we are planning to do in the future. So about AREN, as I said, it is a community-led initiative. It was founded in 2022 by Emmanuel, and its main idea is to bridge the gaps in open science advocacy within Africa. And our mission is to empower African researchers to meet the global demands of openness, because I think in a few years or still currently, openness is becoming a must. It's not becoming soon. It will not become an option. And we are part of a global network of international reproducibility networks. So here are all the reproducibility networks all around the world, and it was actually started by UK AREN, and then it spread to include many other countries and continents around the world. So our agenda, as I said, it's mainly to promote open science and reproducible research in Africa. And we're doing so, especially addressing grassroots researchers, because what we noticed is that, there are some open science efforts that are going around in Africa, but they're mainly, looking at the stakeholders or involving the stakeholders. But, the researchers doing the work are not being really involved in these efforts, and they're not being trained. So what we wanted to do is, to empower these grassroots researchers so that when, the policies and everything comes from the stakeholders, then the researchers are ready to just hit the ground running. Also, what we're trying to do is to establish local networks, and these will be institutional and national and regional networks across Africa. And finally, what we're hoping to do is to set a continent-wide network, a community of open science that, support each other and help us understand more about the needs, the unique needs that the African ecosystem, requires from open science, because it's not one size fits all. There is going to be definitely certain things that need to be modified to fit the African continent. As I said, we are a Pan-African community, And actually, we started our community in August 2023. And we're using a very simple sign-up form that, enable us to understand individual awareness around open science. So we already, from our community, we know like which open science aspects are needed more and which open science aspects are well known to our community. It will also help us assess our reach and also, very importantly, identify marginalized and underrepresented communities. Because in Africa, there are some countries that, are basically not visible at all when it comes to open science. So we are hoping to do, active effort to reach these communities. We currently have members from 29 African countries. We have more than 300 community members and more than 170 institutions, organizations. 60% of our community is from the life and health and biological sciences, while 80% are faculty members, researchers, and postgraduate students. And these, are the people who are doing the research. They are the ones who are doing the work. And we value each and every member of our community because we see every member as a gateway to their community. So even if we have one person from one country, this is, very valuable, and this person will enable us to have more reach within that country. So that's why every member is really valued. We are doing a lot of activities when it comes to open science training. So we have training sessions about open science that involve the whole community, for the whole 300 plus community members. And, in these trainings, we either do it ourselves or we invite experts, open science experts from all over the world to come and engage with our community and train them on different open science aspects. Then we have a more intensive training program, which is called the Local Network Leads Training Program. And I'll be talking into more details about this training program. We also have webinar series that are called AREN Echoes. And in this series, we invite community members, African researchers, to come, and engage with our community and show them how they are using open science and applying the open practices within their research. And I'll also talk a bit about that. We also have the Open Science Bytes resources, and these are open educational materials that we are developing and making it openly available for everyone. We also have national and discipline open science working groups. So now we have a working group in Ghana, we have a working group in Ethiopia, and we also have a working group for the librarians, because we noticed that the librarians are sort of, the gatekeepers when it comes to accessing research. So it was very important for us to start this working group, and the idea is that, for example, librarians from all over Africa would come together and try to see what they need, what their community needs, and what they need when it comes to training, to help them be more open and help their communities to be more open. And finally, we have the Open Science Bridges Initiative, where we as AREN, go and engage other communities. So not our community members. We engage other communities and we try to train them as well. I'll talk into a bit details about it as well. So for the AREN Echoes, as I said, it's, asking our community members, the researchers, to come and share how they made their work open. And, the idea is that, this will provide practical evidence on how researchers from different backgrounds could implement the open science principles in their work. Then I'll talk a bit about the open science but resources. And I said it's an open educational material. So, all the slides, any educational material that we produce, we deposit it on Zenodo. and we make it open access for everyone to, to take and use. And it's called Open Science Bites because, we're giving open science in a bite size. Only the introduction, only the general aspect, for example, of preprints, of reproducibility. So it's, aimed at delivering, that just basic knowledge of the open science principles. That's why it's called Open Science Bites. And then for the Open Science Bridges, as I said, we as AREN go and engage other external communities. So for example, we did training sessions for author aids, and we also did training session for forum. And, this was a beautiful, way for us to engage other communities and, learn from them and help them learn from us as well. And finally, we have the most important and biggest program that we currently have, which is the Local Network Leads training program. And actually, our first cohort have just finished their training. They started in April 2024. And the trainees must have a position within an African university or a research institution. So this was, a must for all the applicants for them to be accepted into the training program. It's a tiered, tiered training that takes 6 months, and I'll also talk a bit more about that. And the aim of it is, to start building those institutional networks, which is one of our main goals at AREN. So that's why we take people from institutions and we train them in open science, and we ask them to go and train their communities. But at the same time, these members are now linked together, and they will be able to work together, to advance open science within their institutions and within the African continent. So as I said, it's a tiered training program. The first level was aimed at delivering basic knowledge, because most of our applicants didn't even know what, for example, a preprint is. So we had to start bit by bit to introduce them to the different open science topics. And, then in the second level, we delved into more practical aspects of open science, how to post a preprint, how to choose a license for your work, those practical aspects. And finally, the third level was, giving them advocacy skills, because as we said, the main goal that we are doing by training them is for them to go and train their communities to create that snowball effect. And it's a very intensive training program, and it's very strict. That's why you can see that from level 1, we started with 71 trainees, but we ended up with 29 trainees. And, these were the ones that were consistent. These were the ones that, were active, attending and engaging, because this was very important for us. They have to be really interested in open science and committed to it, to be part of the Local Networks Lead Training Program. And just a brief overview of what they had in each level. For level 1, as I said, it's the knowledge about reproducibility, open peer review, open repositories, and so on. And in level 2, it was more about the practical aspects. And also, we trained them on how to use different open science platforms like Octopus, the Open Science Framework, and Society. And as I said, level 3 was more about advocacy. We taught them about leadership skills, about community engagement skills, all the skills that they will need to become effective leaders for their community. And all in all, we had about 50 training sessions. So it was very, very intensive, but it was really worth it at the end. And of course, we couldn't have done it because AREN is currently led only by me and Emmanuel, and we are volunteering, to run AREN. We are not funded. So it was amazing that all of the expert trainers that we had in this training session, they also volunteered to help us. And they were from many different open science communities all over the world. And this was really amazing. And this is what's lovely about the open science communities, is that, you ask them and they just come and deliver, which is really, really nice. And it's something that we really appreciate. And without that, I think AREN wouldn't have been able to do what it's doing right now. And our 29 finalists, as I said, next they will start the process of engaging their communities. And these are all, the wonderful universities and institutions that they are from all across Africa. So within the next year, we're really excited, to see these universities and communities really engaging with open science. So this was about the local network leads training program. And, the idea behind all of these initiatives is to move open science from just being an abstract, from just, because many people are just talking, open science, we need to be open, we need to be open. But we wanted to, make it practical and relatable, to show the researcher how to be open instead of just, talking about openness and how it's important it is, and so on. So this is the main the main idea behind AREN, is to be practical and relatable, to make open science practical and relatable. For the challenges, of course, the biggest challenge is the funding, lack of funding. And this is something that unfortunately, all of the open science communities and open science initiatives are led by volunteers. And of course, this is not sustainable, because burnout would happen, because, these people have other responsibilities to do. But so I think it's very important for funders to start considering, really investing in these initiatives to help them be sustainable and to carry on their aims and goals in a more sustainable fashion. The second thing, of course, is the cultural resistance, because it's very important, and especially in Africa, the mentality has been that you have to be closed. You have to protect your things and not show it to everyone. So when we come and tell them, oh, you need to make everything open, then there's a big cultural resistance. But, bit by bit, this hopefully will change. And finally, of course, is the absence of policies. And unfortunately, this is something right now, AREN, we cannot do that because we're not engaging with stakeholders. But, as we train our LNLs and, train our communities, and we're already starting to see that, they are already engaging with their, administrators and deans and vice chancellors, and they're trying to convince them about doing policies. And actually, some of them have already started making open policies for their institutions, which is amazing, to be honest. It really made us happy that, we are starting to reach these stakeholders. And finally, for the road ahead, of course, what we're hoping to do is to increase our reach across Africa. Currently, we are really missing the engagement of Central Africa, but, we are going to actively reach out to these communities and try to bring them on board within our community. And of course, the other goal is, to secure a long-term funding and institutional commitments, so that, we'll not get burnt out and we don't, stop doing all the work that we are doing. And finally, what we are hoping to do is, to really have tangible changes, and changes that we can really see across the African research ecosystem when it comes to open science practices. So with that, I end my session, and thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lamis. That was incredibly insightful, and it was great for us also from Form side to get to know a bit more about what our members are up to. I think the focus on capacity building and the focus on really just making sure that people have the necessary empowerment within themselves to take open science and take these practices and push it forward is absolutely crucial. And we really from Form side, we really relate to the challenges that you mentioned as well, relating to funding and sort of that sustainability and longevity. So I hope that over time we can all come up with solutions to these problems that I think many of us have and share together. So moving on now, we're going to move on to our final speaker, Irina Kuchma, who is joining us from Ukraine. And she is going to be discussing regional case studies of no-fee open access publishing in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. Irina Kuchma is the open access program manager at, I think it's a EIFL.net. Her responsibilities include advocacy of open access to research results and supporting in developing open access policies, training and support in setting up and interconnecting open repositories, and organizing workshops and other knowledge sharing events. The floor is yours, Irina.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for the introduction, Nahil, and thank you for the invitation, and thanks for joining this session. I would like to reflect together with you on how we could collectively support quality and sustainability of open access publishing, and I'll specifically focus on North Africa. What I'm presenting is also published as a report, available as a PDF, also available as an online version. I'll drop a link in the chat to that report. And for us, it's a part of a 3-year project where we provide funding and also capacity building activities to publishers of open access journals in Africa that don't charge any fees, neither to authors nor to readers, obviously, because they're open access journals, the so-called diamond open access journals. And this project is supported by Welcome, and we run it together with AJOL, African Journals Online, and AREN, West and Central Africa Research and Education Network. For the North African focus, we received responses from journal publishers in Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, and Tunisia. For the first part of the report and during the survey, where we asked about quality and sustainability approaches in no-fee open access publishing. And we're also very grateful to country reports that were written by Kamal Belhamel, who is also here today and will be speaking tomorrow at panel I. Also Bassem Amira from Tunisia, who is also here today, and we have colleagues from Morocco, Rashida Yassi and Fadou El Maghri. I don't think they're here on the call today, but they provided very, very valuable insights on no-fee open access publishing in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. I would like to start with this quality notion. And when we were brainstorming what we include in quality, and of course, we look at the quality of peer review, also activeness of editorial boards in journals, existence and compliance with policies, guidelines, instructions on editorial quality, and also research integrity, publication ethics. We also looked at technical services efficiency of those open access journals. For example, whether publishing infrastructure support full publishing workflows online, whether some work is still done via email. And then also visibility and discoverability of those journals. For sustainabilities, we investigated how no-fee open access journals work, what kind of funding they receive from the institutions, because usually they're based in African institutions, what kind of other sources of funding they receive, how do they consider their sustainability, what kind of support they receive in kind from their institutions, non-monetary, whether there are any incentives, and what kind of collaborations are going on already and could be strengthened. So starting with sustainability, that's a screenshot from our report. And even though many institutions and many journals do have a dedicated unit working on the journal, unfortunately, about 60% of our respondents still rely on volunteer work fully, partially. And we would like to work together with everyone involved to try to change that, because we believe that such valuable service as journal editing and publishing should really be rewarded monetarily. Then in terms of funding, a good news is that many journals receive some kind of funding from the institution, and that funding could be either permanently provided subsidy or temporary negotiated kind of subsidy. So that was a good news for many journals, but some journals still struggle to receive this kind of support. For other sources of funding, rather than institutional support, journals that don't charge any fees to neither authors nor readers, they make some money on advertising. They also organize events, for example, conferences, training sessions, and they charge for that, and then they reinvest what they earn at events into journal publishing. They also have donations, grants. Some do have membership support programs. Some charge optional publication fees, so it's not a requirement to pay a fee if a journal publishes an article, but if an author wants to donate something to a journal, there is a possibility, and some journals receive that donation. Then print on demand, and that's of course on the paid basis. So journals can make some money on selling print copies. Some journals also receive seed funding for initial journal volume, and then starting from that, they grow sponsorships and support from partners. Also types of financial support that journals receive. For sustainability, it was interesting that 40% of those who responded to the survey said that their funding is stable, very stable, and then 39% said that their funding is unstable or very unstable. So you can see that they really on some of them are doing great, and some of them are really struggling. And what is really worrying about those who are struggling is that if they won't be able to receive support for continuing as an no-fee journal, then they might switch to a business model where they will start charging article processing fees, and that wouldn't be so affordable and aligned with the public good notions that Monica brought in the beginning of this session. For institutional support, usually institutions provide those journals with infrastructure for publishing, also for connectivity, email service, premises for offices. And what was also interesting for us and what we would like to develop within this project is that almost a quarter of those who participated in the survey said that they receive rewards and incentives from their institutions for publishing a journal. For example, being a journal editor, they receive additional points during annual research evaluation and promotion. Some of them receive allowances, some of them receive honoraria, some of them get reduction in regular work hours. So, for example, they have a little bit less teaching load in their institutions or less administrative work because their journal publishing service is considered a service to the community. And this is what we would like to see happening in other universities, to really recognize and reward journal editors for their contributions. In this project, we would like to strengthen collaborations among journals, and it was really encouraging for us to see that more than 3/4 of those who participated in the survey would like to collaborate. So that's a good news, and they would like to collaborate on training, support, advice on publishing policies and practices. They would also like to collaborate on IT services, journal productions, communication, editorial services, and also even on administrative, legal and financial issues. On the quality aspect, it was very encouraging to see that those no-fee open access journals in Africa have good peer review practices. Almost all of them have some kind of peer review. Usually, majority of them have double-blind anonymous peer review, but there are also experiments with open peer review, which was also very interesting and encouraging. And also most respondents have policies in place to ensure research quality and research integrity. On the challenges related to editorial quality, journals struggle with human resources, especially support staff, managers, assistants. They would also love to invest more in author development support, also continued training for journal staff and also for reviewers. Copy editing and typesetting is an issue because in most cases those services are outsourced and should be paid for. Then better collaboration and engagements with journal editorial boards, because in many journals, editorial board members sit all over Africa and even all over the world, and it would be useful to be able to meet in person from time to time. And then for many authors submitting articles to these journals, English is not a native language, and journals struggle with support for English editing. And then with this rise of generative AI tools, journals really struggle to be able to quickly detect content generated by AI. And it would be good for them to have access to the tools that could help them in doing so. For the technical service efficiency, most of those journals run journal platforms in-house. using open journal systems as the most popular software, but some of them also participate in national or regional platforms like African Journals Online. And for those running their publishing platforms in-house, they are struggling with content archiving and backup, like real long-term content archiving. They're struggling with persistent identifiers, and there was a session earlier today looking into some solutions, how especially DOIs or other types of persistent identifiers for content like ARC could be more affordable to journal editors and publishers. And then platform maintenance in terms of periodic upgrades is an issue. In terms of indexation, most journals that participated in our survey are indexed in different international indexing services and databases. But even before getting indexed, or those who are not indexed, they do struggle to satisfy some non-technical participation criteria. For example, if they publish only in local languages, or some of them struggle to satisfy technical criteria if they don't have enough resources for XML production or some other technical developments. And these are also some of the areas that we would like to see addressed in the future. What was also very encouraging is that journals would like to have access to some kind of professional development resources. They would like to see more capacity building happening. And we are launching a community of practice for no-fee open access journal publishers that hopefully will address some of those issues. And now a glimpse on what's happening in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. And Kamal could provide a little bit more context on Algeria. So these are some of the strategies that Algerian open access journals, most of Algerian journals are no-fee diamond open access journals. And these are the strategies they use to publish as no fee. So they receive some subsidies. They also publish when they receive articles. They also offer services on open science services like research data management. They use open source software and tools to run their journals. They try to have the publication processes as efficient and as automated as possible. And then they do trainings for volunteers and editors, and also organize promotional and awareness activities about the importance of no-fee open access publishing. And then Algeria is the reason Algerian scientific journal platform that hosts many journals, but also some journals are hosted on institutional platforms. And this platform has funding from the ministry and central support. Similarly, in Morocco, there is a platform which is run by National Center for Scientific and Technical Information. And this platform solves technical issues for the journals, and some solutions in Morocco that could be applied to make no-fee open access publishing even better would be to try to get some more funding sources, strengthen collaborations among journals, be able to receive longer-term grants, improve visibility of Moroccan journals, and make sure that authors return and publish with those journals, local journals, and also attract more reviewers and, of course, more readers. For Tunisia, and Bassem is on the call, and he can provide some more details. National Center for, maybe I'll say it in French, because it's the Centre National Universitaire de Documentation Scientifique, supports journals with visibility, for example, DOIs, and also best practices training. And unfortunately, in Tunisia, there is no central platform yet for the journals published in the country, and that could be a good solution. Yes, we saw in Algerian and Moroccan case, because such platform could help with standards, could also help with better visibility and collaborations. So I would like to thank once again everyone who contributed to this report, and thank you. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Irina, for that great presentation. Again, it goes back to the comment I had about Monica's as well. It's so great to see the tangible, like quantifiable data when it comes to open science, and then especially in this case, when it comes to open science within the region. It's also really great for us to see the numbers on, people's efforts, the landscape in general, the struggles that people are facing, so that we can actually do something about these numbers. So we're gonna open up to questions now. Like we've said, just making sure that all of our speakers are jumping back on, so we can begin. As we said on the chat, and as I said in the beginning, if you do have any questions for our speakers, please do throw them into the Q&A box now, so that we can get the discussion going, and so that you can have this, take advantage of this valuable time with our experts. In the meantime, while we wait for people to type up their questions, I do have some from my own side. It was great throughout this panel to sort of see how we started with Monica from a very global perspective, connecting back to the SDGs, and then kind of bringing it back down to regional levels. So in the case of Africa as a continent, and then also in the case of North Africa, to be a bit more specific within the region, or that region in that sense. So I loved being able to sort of map through all of that. I think the first question that I have for Monica is, relating back to the SDGs. I know that there's already quite a big debate, and we're not going to get really into that because it's not the point of the panel, about the SDGs as a metric in general, and its value towards really pushing the world towards a more socially aware and sustainable and just place. But I was wondering more from, considering that you're coming in from a bit more of a global north perspective, and kind of touching on that, more international lens. I was wondering, in your opinion, or through, your own work, what you have found to be general challenges towards openness that we face, because I know that Lemis and Irina already touched on some of the challenges that these regions that we were discussing are facing. But sort of from your perspective, what do you think broadly in relation to the SDGs and the fact that they are struggling to, do what they were designed to do?
Absolutely.
What do you think have been some of those challenges, and why do you think we still have that resistance to openness, like you said, with so much climate research still being behind paywalls, even though it's been very clearly shown that it could benefit us so much more if it was accessible to all?
Yeah, I really like how you phrase that question, because I think it touches on different ways to deconstruct a problem, and recognizing sort of the multidimensionality of an unjust system, like the way that we produce knowledge right now, and how the multiple systems of oppression, I think, that exist in the world. Knowledge production is not immune from that. Yeah, and I just want to agree with you that the Sustainable Development Goals is like it's a construct, and using it as another way to break down the problem, and something that I have found in this work and we have found in this work is like, yeah, what are openness is a pretty big issue, with a lot of players with power, which is part of, like, I think eventually I'll get to sort of answering that part of your question, and thinking about, like, if we look at it from sort of like specific discipline areas, that makes the problem a little bit more tangible. Even just like the case study of thinking about how do we open up the IPCC report? Like 18,000 papers are still a lot, but that still just feels like a tangible number, like a doable number, versus like the millions of papers that are out there that just seem so insurmountable. And so, like, there's no way we're ever going to convince publishers to open up all the papers on climate change research. So, like, how can we sort of parcel up the problem in a better way? And so, like, I think that's sort of what a little bit of what you were talking about too, is like sort of that's one dimension of the problem. The other dimension is, really hearing about the funding issues, and not that we're immune to it in the global north, but I would say, like, the bigger issue from like a global north perspective, that's causing resistance to making work open is the incentive structures that exist for researchers. So even though there's sort of this moral imperative and they agree that they want to make this work open, the incentive to keep their work like closed and try to maximize the number of papers that they can get from their data, or publish in specific outlets that they think are going to get them the next position or the interview or the job. It's so difficult to work against those incentives. And those incentives, like, all the power is held, like a lot of that power is held by like some of these large publishers. So, even though we have like resources and English is our like working language, it's so hard to work against such a powerful entity, like publishers, who know that like they're needed in order to sustain these incentives. And until we change the incentives, like, the publishers will always have that power.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think power is an unavoidable conversation when it comes to things like this, because openness is always something that I think threatens a lot of like power hierarchies in a way as well, or forces us to rethink the way that we've gotten used to the concept of scientific research, of scholarship, of anything related to, which is very interesting, because when it first started off, it was very open and it's closed up over the years. Thank you so much. I think that was a great way of shining light on a really complicated subject. And I think last year we had a panel on decolonization that I had the honor of chairing as well. And these conversations, unfortunately, you kind of walk away being like, I don't know if there's a solution necessarily, because it is so complicated, it is so multifaceted. But I think that's why I went back to the point of tangible, quantifiable solutions. As you said, with trying to open up your specific project, I think that shines a light and gives like a little bit of hope to the open community that it is possible. Because if you think about it as such a big topic, it can become very overwhelming for sure.
Yeah,
thank you. So for Irina, there's a question about whether there is any news regarding the feedback on the grants and funding given to some diamond journals in the Maghreb region by the project. How is it going?
Thanks a lot for this question. That's actually sad news, that we hardly received any proposals from the region, and I'm dropping a link in the chat to the call conditions that we had this year, and we will also repeat this call next year. So if there are publishers of no fee open access journals today, or if they will be listening, please have a look, and if you comply with initial eligibility criteria, please reach out to me, because if it's an issue of maybe writing down a proposal, we'll be happy to assist you. And we accept submissions in not only in English, in French as well. Unfortunately, our Arabic is very basic, so we don't accept them in Arabic. But I hope that next year we'll have more submissions from this region, and we would like to prioritize submissions from the region. We would also like to work with institutions, with national level initiatives, to think what could be done on the national or regional level. And also next year we'll launch a new call to help journals flip from charging APCs to being no fee journal. If there is an interest, African Journals Online will investigate some strategies how this could be done, and then we'll also hope that we'll be able to provide some initial funding. So maybe that will create more interest from the region as well. And I dropped my email in the chat, and please reach out to me if you are interested in any of these topics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's great. I mean, it's sad to hear that you didn't get as much, and I'm wondering if that's a lack of visibility or just a lack of, capability within the region, not knowing, like you said, how to write up a proposal, not feeling confident in their abilities. So it'll be very interesting to see how that progresses for sure. For Dr. Lamis, another question from Basim Amira. Did you collaborate, or do you plan to do any collaborations with regional NREN? I think you meant AREN, over the African continent. So are there any plans for any kind of collaborations across the continent?
Yeah, actually our main goal is collaboration, because at AREN we don't want to reinvent the wheel, so even what we tell our communities, please, we even show them, there, for example, there is the Open Science Community of Egypt, and there is the Open Science Community of Nigeria. So we tell all of our community members that are from Egypt and Nigeria to join these communities. It's good to join as many communities as possible. And for us, we are really, happy, and we value every collaboration that we could have, with open science initiatives, whether they are based in Africa or global. Because, for example, in our training program, it was only possible through collaborations, because we couldn't deliver 50 sessions, 50 sessions that are really advanced and, in detailed. But then we said, if there is already someone who delivers this training, so why would we reinvent the wheel and do the training ourselves? And so by this way, we feel like we sort of act as a gateway for international open science communities to be exposed, the African community to be exposed to to global open science communities. And these open science communities are also learning from our African community, because there are certain challenges in Africa that are not in the global north. So they also feel like them coming and engaging with our community is rewarding for them in adapting sort of their initiatives to fit all possible researchers from everywhere in the world. Yeah, so we really do value collaboration very much.
Absolutely. I think in the open world, or in openness in general, collaboration is absolutely key for us to be able to keep going. There is another question from Iman Ghazel. I hope I'm saying your name right. This session was amazing as it contributes to the decolonization of knowledge, a crucial endeavor in combating what is referred to as epistemic racism. My question, though general, is what advice can you give to scholars and attendees to begin promoting open access within the academic community? I think this is open to whoever, they didn't specify a specific speaker.
Maybe I can start, sir. It's a great question. And I think the best way is to try to practice open access, because if you practice, then it's also easier to promote it. And if you're a researcher I think we tried to convince you today that open science is better than closed science, and there are different elements in open science, and you don't need to do all. You can start with something. You can start, for example, publishing in open access, and there are a lot of good open access journals that don't charge any fees. Or you can make your preprints available in a preprint repository, or you can use your institutional or national repository to make papers that you publish closed access, openly available, or you can share your data. I don't think there are, well, actually there are national research data portals, for example, in Morocco, or also in maybe in other countries, or there are disciplinary repositories. If you work with code, you can also make a code available, and just to re-emphasize that there are many communities working on open science in the region, and you can reach out to any of us, and we'll be happy to connect you with the people in your institutions or in your countries to help you in your advocacy efforts. Thank you.
Like what Lemi's just put in the chat, walk the walk and don't just talk the talk. Absolutely. Does anyone else have anything to put to question? Yes.
Yeah, I think I just want to quickly also just acknowledge Betul's comment in the chat, that I think, like, I'm going to try to connect it with this question, which is that reemphasizing that even open is not immune to systems of oppression. And a really good example of that is the rise of article processing charges as a way of open. That was just sort of a recapitulation of, of inequities driven by the global north. And so, I think I would love for us, and I think this was a great example in these talks, to focus on different ways in which, like, communities and community-led and scholar-led organizations have created tools with a focus on trying to subvert some of these inequities, and focusing on, like, openness as a means to equity and justice, as opposed to, like, a different type of business model. And look for those tools and promote those tools. They're out there.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Lemise, do you have anything other than?
Yeah, I think in connection with what Monica said, what I would really advise also is to look at the issues that, for example, if you're trying to promote open science in your institution, try to pick up the problems that the institution is facing, and try to link that to open science. And if you do that, this, like, really reduces the resistance, because you're creating solution for a problem that they are really having, and really suffering from. And I think this would be a gateway to introducing more and more open science practices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it goes back to the idea of how to play within the means of the system while also trying to change the system, because I think a lot of times we feel like we have to choose one or the other. So I think that's a really good tip on how to push that forward. All right, we are technically over time, so I'm gonna have to end the Q&A now. Unfortunately, I was loving this discussion. I think we could probably sit and have this conversation for hours. Right before everyone jumps off, though, just quickly, we do have a Forum 2024 survey, and if you could just take a second to fill it out, let us know what you've been doing so far. You will be able to access this survey throughout the entire conference. So if you don't want to do it now, you can do it later. After you get, like, a bit more of an idea. We will leave the slide up for about a minute, but in the meantime, I just want to say thank you to our speakers. Thank you to everyone who's joined us. Sorry, there's some sound happening in the background that I cannot currently control. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to the speakers. Thank you to everyone who's supporting the organization of the conference. And also thank you to all of our delegates, of course, for joining us and making this such a fruitful an important conversation that needed to be had. And with that, thank you. We are going off to lunch now. We will be back in an hour for the final sessions of the day. Have a good day, everyone.